Ryan.
What?
I'm introducing you, Ryan.
I'm so lost right now.
I know you're supposed to be. You know why?
Why?
Because it's Friday, and you know what that means?
That it's actually Saturday?
Well, I mean, we are in the past currently. I
Oh,
think.
in terms
I
of
don't know.
listening?
Yes, but it's the Keychains podcast.
Wait, so my audio must have cut out because all I heard was you go three, two, one, and then there was like a second or two of silence, and then Ryan.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I was like, "What?"
Yep. It's perfect. Anyway, so yes, it's the Keychains podcast. So we finally played a Chainbound event, and it was awesome.
It was. It was a good time.
I was actually pretty concerned because essentially the way my Tuesdays work out is I don't end up at the game store until like 7 o'clock, and the game store closes at 10. So I'd been very cautious about the idea of running sort of a tournament at on our game night because just because of timing. But man, 35 minutes is I've come around on best of one timing. Like 35 minutes is perfect. Like it just was enough to get it done.
So it's funny you should say that. On Reddit, there were people talking about how 35 minutes was nowhere near enough time, and that most of their games were ending with tiebreakers.
That's interesting.
Because I don't think, like, I think that we're experienced players. I think that we're decent players. I don't think we're like amazing players. I definitely still don't remember and recognize cards. So like maybe half to a third of the time, I just refresh my memory of whatever card they just played. But I still think like we're going at a decent clip. I mean, a sealed is obviously going to be different, but like we played. So I guess for format for our Chainbound, we did Archon. We each brought our own deck and just played that because that was the easiest thing. But I mean, I the longest game all night was 30 minutes.
Yeah, we often had like a surplus of time in between each rounds or each round.
I think maybe each of us knew our like I knew my deck really well. And I think that the other people knew their decks pretty well too. So that might have been a part of it. Because if you think about it, if you know your deck really well, then you may have questions about your opponent's cards, and you may need to spend a little bit of time making decisions as far as strategy and tactics in the game. But you don't need to spend a lot of time thinking about the cards in your hand, like what they are, what they do. You don't have to refresh your memory about the cards you've got in play. You don't have to remember what you might still have in your deck because you know your deck really well. So maybe that was the big difference.
So one of the other things I think that really helped us with this is that a lot of people just had the basic rules down, so there wasn't a lot of questions. No one was new,
Right.
so it was just like, all right, here's what's going on my opponent's board. Here's what's going on my board. Let's just go. And there's a skill in watching what your opponent's doing, looking at your hand, and knowing what moves you're going to make on your turn, and knowing how to adjust with what you have in your hand based on you know what you're seeing happening. uh, I guess it's maybe just because I've had so much experience with playing Magic and knowing like that instant speed interaction, I have to be constantly aware of what's changing with the board state. So I mean that experience might help me, but like everyone just kind of having that same mindset of sitting down, watching what the opponent's doing, watching what you're doing, and then just reacting based on that, I think sped up our game times a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. That made no small difference.
So, and then the results of that, I came in third, I think. Is that what happened?
Yep. So it was Brian came in first. I squeaked into second. You were third, and I think you and I had identical records. I was 2-1 with a bye, and I think you were also 2-1 with a bye. Correct?
I was 2-1 with a bye, yeah. So the
Yeah. So
bye
I think
was
it
my
was
second win.
right. So I think that it was just strength of schedule or whatever that put us into second and third respectively. So I should probably split my winnings with you.
No, it's fine. I got a cool lanyard out of the deal.
That's true.
I played my Annihilation Ritual deck, which was pretty fun. That was Gopple, the Privateer of Bucklers. In my first game, it was another situation of getting that out turn one. I did learn that deck not having Annihilation Ritual early definitely slows it down. But otherwise, it's still a fun deck to play. It's fun because of how much it changes the game state once
Yeah.
that card is out. So, and then having 3 Charettes and 2 old Brunos, like it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I played Richard the Scaled. I'm not really going to talk about it because I spent what a good uh,
We
6 hours talking about it last episode.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Somewhere around there. I don't know what the final clock in was. But no, so I
There's a
played
lot of
Richard the
editing.
Scaled. Yeah. And it was fine. The one thing, so Brian's deck, and I don't remember the name of it, so unfortunately you'll just have to trust us that this is what it had in it. But he had a lot of Mars and he had a lot of Sanctum. Well, being 2 houses, I guess there was an even third of each. But a lot of he had a lot of armor in his Sanctum and a lot of protection in his Sanctum, and then his Mars was, the classic Mars. You get a bunch of Mars guys out, they all fight and reap and do awesome things. But the tricky part about Mars is always keeping them on the table, and that's where his Sanctum went really well with his Mars because he had like what 2, 3 bulwarks in his deck,
I
so
think
he
he
was giving.
said I think he said it was 3 bulwarks
Yeah,
and a gray monk on the
yeah.
table every game he played.
Yeah, and that's just ridiculous. So you're looking at like creatures that have like 4 armor, 5 armor potentially, depending on how things are stacking out. And it was just like what I was finding. The big weakness for the deck I was finding is that there's a difference between soft removal and hard removal. Soft removal are things like Relentless Whispers, Positron Bolt, where you do damage to remove things. And those are usually fine for the most part. You can pair them up with a creature to kill something if it's a high power creature. You can pick off a bad penny or a succubus if you need to. But with all the armor that he had on the table, my soft removal, which is all that deck had, was doing nothing. I did not have enough powerful stuff, and I would have to spend 3 cards to destroy one of his. It was just so much card advantage. And then he got a mother. He got 2 mothers out on the table. He had a bulwark next to like at least one of them. So he was just getting extra cards the entire game, and nothing I could do could take those creatures out. It was just such a bonkers deck. And then hard removal, I guess I should close the loop on that. Hard removal is stuff like Hand of Dis, where it's destroy a creature, even if it's conditional, where it's non-flank or what have you, or Gateway to Dis. Like these are all hard removal cards that are going to just, yeah, no, stuff's dead.
Yeah.
I'm really finding that now that I'm looking at like when I'm looking through my decks and stuff, I just want like 1 or 2 pieces of that hard removal. That's just like, hey, you know what? I don't want your mother on the table anymore. Like let's get rid of that.
Yeah, is Logos the other house in his deck?
Oh, it would have to be because Mother.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, so it was
mothers.
Logo. So it was Logo Sanctum and Mars, which was just such a great combination because Mother kept filling his hand up, so he had options for his Mars. Sanctum just ran interference. Sanctum was, to use the American football metaphor, they were his linemen. Like they just sat there and blocked. And then his Logos, I don't know. I'm going to stop the metaphor there, but so Sanctum ran interference. They were his linemen, and then the Mars it let them go off. Like he got all his Mars stuff down, he got all his utility logo stuff down, and it was just a nightmare trying to deal with that thing. He had so many creatures there wrapping around onto the next row because there wasn't enough sideways room to get them,
Yeah.
and that was not unusual. I think that happened in literally every game he played. And I think he said that he's like 7-1 on the Crucible with that deck. So
Huh.
it was a nightmare to be sitting across from. But I mean, Brian's a great player and he's a great guy, so that definitely eased the pain a little bit of getting crushed.
Yeah. So yeah, so that was kind of our gameplay experience of the week. Um FFG actually did do some neat stuff this week with a live stream of the new decks. So we are going to talk about this for a little bit. If you are trying to stay away from the Age of Ascension spoilers, please jump ahead, or because there's still more to come after this. But we're going to definitely talk about those spoilers. So fast forward. What I'll do is I'll put the timestamp of when the next section starts, and you can just jump to that timestamp to bypass the the spoilers. But so Ryan, take it off.
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to have inclement weather and be working from home the other day when FFG Live was going on Twitch. So I was able to actually watch it because it's blocked at work. I mean, rightly so. I guess Twitch isn't strictly necessary for me to do my job, so I can't blame them for that. Uh, so I was able to tune in and it was really fun. They had two decks. One was from Call of the Archons and the other was from the upcoming set Age of Ascension. So not every card was new, but there was a good substantial amount of spoilers from these new cards. Every time they got a new card out in play, they put it up in front of the camera so everyone could see it. So that was pretty cool. There was around 13ish, I think, spoilers, give or take. Baker's dozen. And so we wanted to talk about a couple of them here. We're not going to necessarily go over every single one of them, um, but there were a couple that jumped out at us as being cool, as being fun and interesting. So we wanted to kind of talk about it a little bit. Steve, what was one of the ones that jumped out at you?
Are we just gonna jump around here? Because I'm gonna let you talk about the one that is the boon to your existence, but I think also simultaneously the bane of your existence.
So we're talking about Key of Darkness, which was the old Shadows key cheating card to let you forge out of turn or out of sequence, I should say. It looks like they're getting rid of it in favor of a new key cheating card. It's called Night Forge. So it's a Shadows card. It's called Night Forge. It has one bonus ember, and it says play. If you have not forged a key this turn, you may forge a key at +4 current cost. So most of the time, that's going to be 10. And 10 ember is not hard to come by, especially if your person, well, it's weird because I was just going to say if your opponent plays Miasma, you can easily get up to 10, but we don't know if Miasma is going to be reprinted. So it's kind of questionable how good this may or may not be. It may be hard to get to 10 ember and stay at 10 ember. We don't really know what's going to be coming out in this set.
I mean, to
Um,
keep in mind too, though, that like you're still able to play against Call of the Archons decks, so miasma
that's true.
still relative
Yeah,
to
that's
this
I
card.
didn't even think of that. Okay, good, because that's the only thing I can compare things to. So I'm glad it won't be useless comparison. So if your friend is playing Call of the Archons and they play Miasma, you actually have a reliable, efficient way to cheat a key out along the lines of Key Charge and some of those other ones. I like this card. It actually. He's holding a key in his hand. I like to think that that is the Key of Darkness, and he's like, "I'm going to get rid of this. I'm just going to throw this away. This is useless."
So let me ask you this: did they say one way or another during the stream that they were not printing Key of Darkness in the set?
I think there's some people that are based on alphabet and card type. They're going through and crunching the numbers on what cards are getting reprinted or not. So I don't know where that's at and if Key of Darkness still has a chance to be reprinted. Basically, for those that may not be aware, what you do when you're going through and trying to crunch out reprints is since everything is organized alphabetically, you put in which card names you know of, whether they're spoilers or whether they're reprints that are known, and you just figure out alphabetically are there any cards that can fit in there. So if there was let's say there's a card that starts with the word J, like I don't know, Jimmy is a card, and then the next card alphabetically, because you go by card number too. I apologize. You go by card number, so they go in sequence too. So if you find out Jimmy is card number 45, and then Mary is card number 46, then Key of Darkness can't possibly be reprinted because it would fall between J and M, and there's no card numbers available between those two cards. So people are crunching the numbers, trying to see what might get reprinted, what might not. I know they've ruled some stuff out. I haven't actually kept up on it myself, so I don't know. I'm hoping Key of Darkness doesn't get reprinted because I hate that card so much. It makes me so mad.
In a way, it would make sense for it to not exist in just that it's giving shadows more key cheats. I think,
Right.
and then on top of that, since Nightforge gives you an amber, like I mean, you can't. So one thing to keep in mind with this card too is that you can't loop with it because it requires you can only use it if you hadn't forged a key.
And it's
So you
important
wouldn't
that
be
it
able to use this. You wouldn't be able to use Key of Darkness and then forge, or forge at the start of your turn and then use this card.
correct. So yeah, it's an important note that it says that you have not forged a key this turn. So it doesn't matter whether it's during your forge step or
or
not,
not.
just like Steve said. Yeah. So if you have like phase shift and something else, and you're forging a key and then trying to night forge, it's not going to work.
But if you
Um,
can, I think the thing with Night Forge is that you could, in a way, Night Forge and then Key of Darkness if you had an incredible surplus of Amber, which, there are some cards out there that do make, Key of Darkness work. Like
yeah.
if you have an Ether Spider that's been, although I guess that wouldn't work either because the Ether Spider would have been stealing your Amber the entire time. Regardless, there are ways to get a huge surplus of Amber in this game.
Yeah.
And so you could, in theory, Night Forge, then Key of Darkness, because Key of Darkness doesn't have that prerequisite of not forging a key this turn.
Yep.
So I think them not reprinting Key of Darkness would be smart because there are probably going to be some ways. I mean, granted, if you pulled that off, I guess that'd be an incredible reward. Like you were able to collect that much amber without forging a key,
You have
that you were able to,
26 Ember.
yeah.
You need
uh,
10 for the Night Forge, and then it's what, +6 for
so
the
12 for the Key of
yeah,
Darkness.
so like 26. Yeah, that's unless your opponent happens to have 0, because that's very, very unrare.
I mean, if you could steal it up out,
I
I mean,
get.
I don't know. Like it, I'm just saying it might be beneficial for them to not print that card. But
I don't think they will. I doubt they'll reprint it. I doubt they'll reprint it like ever again, unless they come up with a mechanic in a set that like dumps someone's pool completely to 0.
yeah,
Um, but I think the single best thing about Night Forge that actually makes it really good, even compared to things like Key Charge, is that it gives you an Ember when you play it. So if nothing else, if you're like if you have no chance of using the card, but you need some answers, you need to cycle some of your cards to get some new stuff at the end of the turn, you still get an Ember out of it. So it's not, unlike Key of Darkness, unlike Key Charge, with those cards, when you're in a situation where they're kind of useless to you, you get nothing for them. This one, you can play it, even if you can't forge, and you still get the Ember.
right. Yeah, in a way, on the optimum level of playing this card, it is effectively saying you may forge a key at +3 because that card also gives you the amber.
Right, that's
So if you
true. Yeah,
play it to gain the amber, because you're going to gain the amber first and then resolve the card text, you can effectively you can have sit on 9 amber and
yeah,
then play the
which
card and then forge the key.
that's not hard. I expect to see a lot of Night Forge, and it's only an uncommon. So if you get
Yep.
a Night Forge, that's going to be a really good component to a deck.
Yep.
I'm excited to see it. I mean,
I
I guess I'm not excited to see key cheating on the other side of the table, but I would love to get a few of these in a deck.
yeah, I mean you're not going to see it as much as you see key charge just because key charge is common.
Right.
And who knows if they're going to reprint that in Age of Ascension, but it's certainly neat to see shadows with a efficient key cheat for them.
Yep. So next card up.
So I actually liked this card because it rewarded you playing. It rewards you for doing something that Brobnar doesn't really do all that often. So it's Foozle. It's a 5-power creature that has Reap. If an enemy creature has been destroyed this turn, gain 1. So with like ready nonsense that you can do, you could use something like I'm trying to think of a good like mighty javelin to destroy a creature and then reap
Yep.
with her to gain 1, so then you end up getting 2. So it's kind of a do fairy on with a condition, like you have to kill something in order to get 2 out of it, but
It's
honestly,
good.
like yeah,
It's a good
it is
utility
not
creature.
it is
That's
not like the Brobnar style thing to do where it's like I'm going to reap to gain amber, but in order for me to do that, obviously the Brobnar part of it is I have to actually kill something to get it.
right. And it's nice because you can still reap with it even if you haven't destroyed a creature. You still get that benefit. It's just that if you've done the thing that Brobnar likes to do, which is destroy creatures, then you get an added bonus. I like cards like that. And this is a really solid common. I mean, 5-power, a conditional bonus reap ability, like that's a great common.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. So next after that is a really, really interesting card. And it's really interesting just from what it does as well as the kind of design space that it's exploring. It's called Sucker Punch. It's a Shadows action. Gives you 1 bonus ember, and it reads Alpha. So that's one of the new mechanics. You can only play this card before doing anything else this step. Um, and then play. Deal 2 damage to an enemy creature. If that creature is destroyed by this effect, archive Sucker Punch. So that's really kind of cool. If you kill something, so basically that reads it has to be the first card you play in the turn. You use it to deal 2 damage. If that thing dies as a result, you get to put Sucker Punch back in your archive, which is awesome. It's almost like getting it back in your hand, but on a delay. And I actually would rather see, well, because obviously if it came back to your hand, no, if it came back to your hand, you wouldn't be able to play it again anyway because it says alpha.
Right.
But having it go to your archive is really cool and really interesting because then you have it for later turns without it clogging up your hand. I mean, this could have easily said alpha and then return it back to your hand. Well, I guess then you discard it.
So let me pose this scenario to you about this card. So this card is Relentless Whispers, but on a slightly lower scale. So Relentless Whispers is a Shadow's action. It gives you an amber when you play it. Play, deal 2 damage to a creature. If this damage destroys that creature, steal 1. Now, if you think about that though, like it on its face, Relentless Whispers seems a lot better, right? You gain 2 amber effective. Like if you can kill something, you're gaining 2 amber. With this card though, you are essentially getting that same benefit of Relentless Whispers turn after turn after turn. Now you're not maybe
Right.
not getting the steal one, but I've had numerous plays with Relentless Whispers where I've held it in my hand because there's like a Dew Fairy or a Dust Pixie on the table, and I can kill it with that, but they have no amber to steal, right?
Right.
Because maybe they forged a key with the those actions, or they just played that Dew Fairy. Like I can't steal anything, so I'm gonna hold that card back because I want to get maximum efficiency out of it. This is now a card where like I don't have to worry about the steal effect, so I can be like, I'm gonna blow up your Dust Pixie. Now that goes to my archive. Next turn, what other 2 power creature can I blow up? The other thing to think about with Sucker Punch as well is I'm gonna edit this out because it does say enemy creature. So that actually is a good point though too. The one benefit to Relentless Whispers is you can Bad Penny BS it, right? Like
Oh yeah.
you can hit Bad Penny with the Relentless Whispers to kill her, bring her back to your hand, and then play it again, or play her again, and then you're still getting the steal effect without without having to deal with like a 4 hour power creature that has some damage on it or whatever. So you're not
Right.
throwing Relentless Whispers away.
Right. Or
But
if they have armor and stuff like that, if you just can't kill something,
right,
you still get your ember without losing a creature.
right. So that this card is super neat. I hope it ends up being like in practice, it ends up being a really really fun card to play. It is uncommon. It is common, and Relentless Whispers is also common. So I don't know if that means that
Yep.
it's a straight replacement. Although now I feel like it would be super rude to have both cards in a deck.
Well, funny enough, Bad Penny is actually getting reprinted in Age of Ascension.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so there's still going to be shenanigans. I love Bad Penny. I think that it's just such a cool. It's such a Richard Garfield card that
Yeah.
I'm glad. Like I could. It would be a funny running joke. It would be like the like there's cards in Magic they joke about getting reprinted all the time. I would love to see Bad Penny in like every set forever. I would just they would tickle my fancy.
Yeah.
'Cause I love Bad
I
Penny.
mean, you
She's
can't get
great.
rid of a Bad Penny, right?
Right? That would be such a like a funny meta thing if they just printed Bad Penny. She just keeps turning up in every set. Like, oh
I
my god,
do feel
we're
like
not even on the Crucible anymore. We're somewhere else, and she's still here.
I do feel like that would probably incur some player wrath because it's like this is one card like that.
Yeah,
There's
I
could be
would love it.
something new here, and you're still reprinting this card. But
I'm okay with that.
honestly, I like the joke too. I'm way into the joke.
Think of every set as being one card. Think of every set as being one card
Yep.
less. But so we talked about Sucker Punch, how it puts itself in the archive, which is cool. From some of the spoilers we're seeing, there's a good amount of archive manipulation. Archive is going to matter a lot more in Age of Ascension than it did in Call of the Archons. Not in terms of using it, but in terms of
Yeah.
interacting with it. So the next spoiler that we saw is an untamed creature named Tantadlin.
Tantadlin? Yeah, I
There's an
think it's
L
like
in there.
Tan
Tantadlin. Yeah.
Tantadlin.
So I'm gonna go ahead and say that
No,
5
don't.
times fast. So it's a tree creature. So it's like well, I guess all trees are living trees, but it's like an an animate tree. It's 9 power and it deals 2 damage when fighting. So even though it's got 9 power, it's only going to smack people for 2, both coming and going. Um, so it's also got a fight ability. It says fight, discard a random card from your opponent's archives. So that's really cool. First off, random seems bad, but the whole idea of archive is that archive is supposed to be secret from your opponent. So this preserves that secrecy while still getting rid of cards from the archive. So I like that. I think that's actually a really good design choice. Instead of me suddenly knowing what's in your archive, but then maybe you archive another card. So now there's a mix of things I know are in your archive and things that aren't known in your archive. So I like that it's random, so it doesn't spoil that. And with its 9, so it's 2 damage, means that you're not going to be, it's not really, really, really powerful. It's not going to swing in there with 9 power and crush something and then also make them discard something from their archive, which would be huge. So just a huge swing in card advantage. It's only doing 2, and it's got 9 power or 9 life essentially. So it's going to stick around and let you do that multiple times. So if your opponent is playing a Logos deck that is archiving over and over and over again, you're able to just really negate that huge card advantage. I think this is actually a step in the right direction to deal with things like library access decks that put tons of Logos cards in their archive and then take them out for a huge turn. Um, I really like it.
Yeah,
I
there
think
was
it's
one
cool.
other spoiler that I don't have on hand right now. But that has a similar mechanic of that it only deals 2 damage when it fights. So
Yep.
I'm gonna probably expect that this is gonna be an untamed kind of mechanic where the creature will be really,
Yeah.
really big, but it always will do 2 damage. Actually, I have it right here. It is Roxador, which is a 4 power creature that has skirmish. Roxador only deals 2 damage when fighting, but it has a fight trigger that is stun attacked creature. Yeah, I think that's going to be something you're going to start seeing a little bit more where it's like, okay, this only deals 2 damage, but you're going to have this control effect that kind of applies with that fight trigger.
So it's funny. Um, I remember explaining because I play Magic. Steve plays Magic. We have a lot of friends that play Magic. So explaining some of the mechanics of Keyforge to those players, one of the big things that we'd explain is like, okay, well, there's no concept of power and toughness. It's just power and toughness as power. So your life and your damage are the same thing. Well, not anymore. Now there is, this is kind of, by having it deal 2 damage when fighting, but still have 9 power, you're basically giving it a magic style
It,
power toughness or Hearthstone
in
style power
effect,
toughness kind of
yes,
thing.
but the
Right. It's
yeah, the thing that you
functionally.
have to consider though with that is it doesn't increase the damage that it ever out. So anytime you're going to place a power token on that creature, it's still only dealing 2 damage. So if you want to keep the magic
Right.
allegory to it, is every time you would place a +1/+1 counter on the creature, you're really placing a +0/+1 counter on the creature.
Oh, absolutely. And it's still affected by cards that like destroy all creatures with 4 or more
Right.
power, stuff like that. Is still going to factor in, even though it's only
Right.
doing 2 damage. It's still 9 power. So it was just amusing to me that like coming from the magic thing, like, oh, this is very different. Oh, just kidding. It's
Now
it's a more complicated way
now
of doing that, but
having
I like
said
it.
that though, there are ways of still pumping its power. So if you give it something like
Hmm.
Way of the Bear, which is going to give it assault, assault a damage
Yep.
applies before the actual fight damage. So you're going to do 2 damage without actually the Tandalin taking any damage, and then it deals the 2 damage that it would do. Or if you can give it a before fight trigger that would shell out
Yep.
damage first, like it still does the thing. So that you can pump them. It's just your traditional ways of pumping them aren't going to work.
Right.
Right.
You have to be clever about it. And I think it's good. This is a common. I don't know if we mentioned the rarity. It's a common, so it's going to show up a fair amount. So it'll be a great way of messing around with people's archives. So when they sucker punch you, you can hit them with your Tandlin and
Yep.
get rid of it. Hopefully, randomly. So that one's cool. So that brings us to our next card that we're going to talk about, Into the Fray. It's a Brobnar action. It says, play. For the remainder of the turn, a friendly Brobnar creature gains fight, ready this creature. So essentially, boiling that down, it gives a particular friendly oh, it has to be Brobnar. I didn't notice that when I was first reading it through. So it gives one of your creatures, your Brobnar creatures, the ability to fight almost indefinitely. Because every time it fights, it readies again. Now, obviously, that's going to be limited by how much power it has. You know, if it's a 1 power creature and you're trying to fight with it, it's probably not going to last more than 1 fight. But you get some of those giants that we've seen that have like 9 power, 11 power. It's going to be able to do a fair bit of fighting before it gets killed, and we can actually so we can talk about one of the other creatures. So an interesting little interaction here, and granted, it's going to involve getting a legacy card in your deck, which, for those that may not remember, legacy cards are reprints of cards from Call of the Archons that weren't official reprints. So anytime you open a deck,
So one thing to note here is we actually don't know if this card is actually getting reprinted.
that's
They
fair.
did say a significant number of the rares were going to be reprinted in Age of Ascension. So there's a high chance that this card is in the set.
That's true. And with the legacy mechanic, there's always a chance it'll show up in a deck regardless of its reprint status.
Right.
So all that aside, Mugwump is a Brobnar creature. It's 6 power, and it says after an enemy creature is destroyed fighting Mugwump, fully heal Mugwump and give it a +1 power counter. Um, the the cool interaction is that with Into the Fray, that means that you give it the ability to ready itself after it fights. So you can have Mugwump hit something, kill it, fully heal itself, and then ready itself to fight again. So it can just machine gun down your opponent's board. Now, that having been said, oh, and even if it can't kill a creature on one swing, it could hit the creature to soften it up, ready, fight again, assuming it survives the second fight, it would then heal up and ready itself. Uh, one thing to keep in mind is that the rule of 6 does apply to this. The rule of 6 states that you can't play and or use the same card or other copies with the same name more than 6 times in a given turn. So the important thing there is that you can't use the same card more than 6 times. That means that if your opponent has 7 creatures, that last one gets to live. At least with the Mugwump Into the Fray counter, you may have something else. You might have your Mighty Javelin kill it, but that's beside the point.
Yeah, I feel like in most situations you might as well just consider this a board wipe,
Yeah.
unless it does stall out on something.
You know
But
what?
yeah, I mean it's still pretty strong.
Yeah, and you know what? If my opponent gets Into the Fray and Mugwump in their same deck and uses it on me, I'm gonna be happy too. Like, yeah, you know what? We just both live the dream from different sides, but that's fine. So let's take the combo. Well, let's take the combo out of it. Into the Fray. I mean, that's just a decent creature. It's going to require you to have a high power creature to really get value out of it. Because if you just have like a 3 power, 4 power creature, it's probably only going to get to fight once, unless they have a bunch of like really like little things. I will say this this helps remove elusive. So if you have a creature, so if your opponent has an elusive creature, you can play Into the Fray on your Brobnar dude, and then your Brobnar dude can fight once to break that elusive shield, so to speak. It'll ready itself, and then it can fight again to actually kill the elusive creature.
Yeah, I think with Brobnar you're not really going to have too much of a problem.
Actually, sorry, because of the way this works with elusive, if your opponent has like 4 elusive creatures or any number of elusive creatures, you could just play this on one of your Brobnar creatures and then fight every elusive creature to break that elusive shield. So then they have no elusive left at the end of it. I mean, up to 6 of them because of the rule of 6, but still, that's a great way of just eliminating elusive off there. So this almost reads, in a way, uh, like your opponent's creatures lose elusive.
In that instance, yeah. I mean, if you
Sort of.
are
Sort
if
of.
you're at like if you're not at parity with creatures, I mean you're going to run into your rule of 6 before you can
Right.
actually kill a whole lot of things.
Well,
So
killing them is aside, but you can at least knock their elusive off even if you can't kill any of
right.
them. Which is it's just an interesting application. I hadn't thought of that before until now.
I guess this will actually be so. Here's an interesting combination with Into the Fray, and it's another new card. It is called Grok. It is a 5 power creature that has fight. Your opponent loses 1.
Oh,
So
nice.
you can, you know, if you have enough creature targets to fight with, and you can keep Grok alive through multiple fights, you could probably steal, you know, I think if we were talking about averages here, you could probably steal like 2 to 3 or not steal, but force them to lose 2 to 3 amber a turn.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as Grok lives.
I think the average power, if you took like the a normal deck, the average power is probably right around 3. So you could get 2 attacks in before it dies,
Yep.
possibly 3. Any more than that, and you're, gravy town.
Yeah. If you had something like, let's see, if you had something like Blood of Titans, which gives him +5 armor, now he's a 10, or not
Ooh,
+5
man,
armor, +5 power. Now he's a 10.
that's
You
rough.
know, yeah, like that thing swings for the fences. You're gonna lose a ton of amber. Now, granted, Blood of Titans is a uncommon, so its place in the next set is maybe questionable, but I'm sure there's going to be things that pump power in this set that you can obviously apply to Grok, and then you know drop that card.
Definitely interesting.
Yeah. So the next thing, which they spoiled as a Maverick, is Archimedes. It is a Logos card, but in the spoiler, it is an Untamed card that has Elusive, which
Oh, yeah.
for a reminder, the first time this creature is attacked this turn deals no damage. It has 2 power, and then each of Archimedes' neighbors gain destroyed archive this creature. So you place that next to your bulwark, or something, or let's just say mother, and then they get destroyed, they just get archived, you just bring them back out again on your next turn when you pick up your archives. I think that's a pretty fun card. Now it only has 2 power, so the way around this is to just try to kill it through direct damage or something that's going to bypass any maybe neighboring triggers that there might be.
Yeah.
But still a neat card.
So keep in mind too that destroyed archive this creature, the order of operations, in case there's multiple destroyed effects, that kind of thing. It's up to the active player. So if you have Archimedes and a bad penny next to each other, and it's your turn, um, if both of them die, or if sorry, if if bad penny dies with Archimedes next to it, and it's your turn, you get to choose whether Bad Penny goes to hand or archive, I believe.
Right.
Fairly sure about that. If it's your opponent's turn and they kill your Bad Penny while it's next to Archimedes, they get to choose if it goes to your hand or archive. Which, I mean, I don't know how much of a difference that makes. Some would say, and in some situations, it's more debilitating to have Bad Penny come back to your hand than it would be to have her go to your archive.
Right.
And in some cases, it's worse to have her go to your archive. Maybe you're going to call Shadows the next turn anyway, and you've got other cards in your archive that you didn't want to deal with. But if your opponent has Tandlin there and puts Bad Penny in your archive and then hits you with Tandlin and makes you randomly discard Bad Penny, well, now she's actually in your discard pile for once.
Yep. So there's another interesting card that kind of replaces Pawn Sacrifice in a way. I'm not saying that it is going to replace Pawn Sacrifice, but does sort of function the same way. It is called Life for a Life. It is a Shadows card that is play, sacrifice a creature, deal 6 damage to a creature. It also gives you a bonus amber. So now you can sacrifice your Bad Penny to take down like a beefy Brobnar card. Because that's always the thing that I always have with like Shadows removal, is it's either bounce or it's very low direct damage.
Well, it talks a little bit about, like I mentioned at the top of the show, soft removal versus hard removal.
Right.
Soft removal is mostly damage, like little things like that. And this even though it's still technically maybe classified as soft removal because it's dealing damage, when you get to a certain point, when you get to a certain level of damage, it's practically hard removal. So
Right.
I would kind of point this at that, maybe like 9/10 of a hard removal card, which is something like you said, Shadows desperately needs, like a way to just nope, you're dead. Now, so there's a few more spoilers, but just for time purposes and everything, we're not going to necessarily go all over all of them. Additionally, we're probably going to be doing a set review when the entire spoiler is available, so we don't want to tread too much on the same ground that we're going to be talking about later. But the last one I want to mention is Fang House. Not because it's amazing, not because it's like incredibly game breaking or has new mechanics or anything else, but just because the card is hilarious and horrifying. So Fang House is an untamed creature. It's a beast for all you Niffle Queen lovers out there. It's got 3 power, and it has Assault 3 and Hazardous 3. As a reminder, Assault 3 is before this creature attacks, deal 3 to the attacked enemy. And then Hazardous 3 is before this creature is attacked, deal 3 to the attacking enemy. But the best part about this card is the art. It's this snake centipede. So it's got like the face and hood of a cobra, and then it's got the body and legs of a centipede, but then it's also got like feathers on its head and hood. So it's this horrifying amalgamation of two like nasty things and then a bird.
I looked
And
at
it's
that
just
like it was like a. Oh, okay, never mind. Yeah, I get the bird part now.
yeah, you see how it's kind of got like feathers around its head or
Yeah.
whatever. Like only in the Crucible could you have or maybe in the Simic Combines of Magic, could you have a snakeipede, an avian snakeipede.
So I'm going to argue with you about the art being the most interesting part of this card. And you kind of brought it up in that it is a beast. So
Yeah,
a Niffle Queen making it a 4 power creature, and then it having Assault 3 and Assault or Hazardous 3,
yep.
like you don't want this thing swinging at you beforehand, and you don't want to be swinging at it. And then on top of that, it's gonna do all of that, and then it's fight damage. Like, ugh, like just on raw power, this thing is good. And then on top of that, it's uncommon. I mean, it's common.
I don't think there's going to be a fantastic chance of Niffle Queen getting reprinted though, because in order for Niffle Queen to be relevant, it kind of needs Niffle Apes or some other type of Niffle creature. So the only way I could see it being reprinted is if they printed a new kind of Niffle creature, which is not impossible. Like, obviously, they could invent a new Niffle non ape creature and put that into the set. But that would be the only way I could see Niffle Queen coming in. But even without that extra power, it's a functionally 6 offense. To coin a phrase there, it's going to deal 6 whether it's attacking you or you're attacking it. Now, it's only got 3 life, so it's actually this is kind of the opposite of those 2 other cards we were making that joke about power toughness from Magic. This is kind of the opposite situation where it's going to deal more damage than it has life, whereas those other 2s had more life than they were going to deal damage.
Right.
So it's kind of cool that they're hitting that design space of like of asymmetrical damage versus life.
Right.
In both directions, not just the one. And it's cool that they've set their mechanics up to be able to do that.
Yeah, it's another one of those cards that I looked at and I was like, okay. And on its face, it seemed so disinteresting to me. And now that we've talked about it, I'm like, oh, actually, no, this is kind of a pain in the butt
Yeah.
of a creature to see on the other side of the table, and then definitely something I want to see on my side of the table.
Well, and it's a lightning rod. I mean,
Yeah.
I so that's a term used to describe anything that you put it down knowing that your opponent kind of has to remove it or is highly incentivized to remove it. So the witch cycle from Call of the Archons, Witch of the Eye, Hunting Witch, Witch of the other thing. Uh, I can't remember that third witch. I can never remember all 3.
Hunting Witch.
I thought I said Hunting Witch.
Oh, I might have not been paying attention. It's
Well,
Witch of the Eye, Witch of the Hunt, and then
oh, okay.
or Hunting Witch, and then Witch of the Wilds.
Witch of the Wilds, that was the one. Okay. So cards like the Call of the Archons, Witch of the Eye, Hunting Witch, Witch of the Wild. So those are lightning rods because you want to get rid of those as fast as possible. This is another one that maybe isn't quite on the same power as those, but it is still a lightning rod in that if they leave it on the table, then they're going to be losing creatures left and right to this thing. And it's so easy to remove it since it only actually has 3 power. That they're going to be incentivized to kind of burn a removal spell on it just to protect their own stuff.
Right.
So it's in a good place. It's a really good balance, and it's a common too. So you're going to see this thing,
Yep.
and potentially in multiples, and it's going to be obnoxious every time.
Technically, there are 4 witches.
Are there? What's the 4th
Taliga
one?
is a
Oh,
3-power
Taliga's a witch.
creature
Yep.
that each time your opponent plays a creature, you gain one. So it's like reverse Hunting Witch.
Yep. When Hunting Witch is basically full moon, which is every time you play a creature,
Yep.
you gain an ember. Yeah.
Yep.
That's interesting. You need both of those. You want both those in your deck, plus a full moon.
Yeah. So I think it's time that we announce who won the first set of tokens.
Yeah, so the first set of tokens, we did our little random drawing, and I'm not going to do a drum roll. I'm just going to go right into this. It looks like the guys at Discourse Keyforge or Discourse KF are the first winners. So they are a fellow podcast, fellow content creator for Keyforge. I recommend following them on Twitter and maybe checking them out. They're at DISCOURSEKF on Twitter. So that's at Discourse KF. And they just won themselves some sweet strategic dino tokens.
Yep. Just as a reminder, they are the armor and stun tokens for from Strategic Dino. So they're really cool.
Yeah, they're very cool. I think you put an order in too, and you got yours.
I did, and
they are sweet.
Unique amber tokens were much heavier than I expected.
Yeah, in a good way.
In a good way. They are awesome. They look great.
Yeah. Do they have a good mouthfeel?
I can't say I put them in my mouth. It was late enough when I opened the package that I might have been thought about it, but I was too tired and I went to bed.
So bedtime snack, or no, I'll just leave it for tomorrow. So that's cool. So congratulations. We have one more pack of tokens to give away. So still retweet, still do the hashtag KeychainsDino. And even if you don't win, check out strategicdino.com to check out some of his other tokens.
Yeah.
So I know we just mentioned one content creator. That was just because they won. But one thing that we want to try to do in each of our episodes from here on forward is we want to, there's a lot of people in the Keyforge community. There's a lot of people that are doing content, doing great things out there. And we just want to try to mention one of them in every episode. So who we'd like to mention this episode is someone named, or going by the name, Hallie Hapoween. You can catch them on YouTube. What is their YouTube thing?
It's Hallie Hapoween, the URL on there as well.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll put the URL in the show notes.
Okay, cool. And you can catch him on Twitter at Hapoween. And so far on YouTube, he's got a couple gameplay videos from the Crucible up there. So that's really cool. He does a good job with them. It's like 1 game per video so far. I'm sure he's going to be churning out more of those things. And he's pretty active on Twitter. So check him out. After you're done with our podcast, you probably haven't got a whole lot more going on in your life. So here's another way to fill it.
Wow. All right. Well,
I meant Keyforge content. I mean, you are a wonderful person with plenty of friends and lots of things to do to engage your social life. I meant in terms of Keyforge entertainment.
All right, and as usual, you can follow us on Facebook at KeychainsPod. You can also follow us on Twitter, same thing at KeychainsPod. You can send us an email at keychainspod@gmail.com. Please direct all of your hate mail about your social life to Ryan specifically. That way I can filter it out when it comes in and just forward it off to him.
Coming soon, we're going to be getting ourselves on Instagram. We had some credential problems. We're getting those straightened out. And we're going to be putting our episodes on YouTube in the near future as soon as I get to that. But I figured out how to do it. So, that's coming. So that for those of you that find YouTube a little easier to engage with us, we're going to have that going on.
Yeah. All right. Well, have a good one, everybody.
Yeah, take care.
Bye.